At this point, we'll have our industry panel led by Microsoft. So we have two VIPs with us. So anyway, I was saying in this screen, you have this link on the top left that if you want to ask a question, they're going to answer them for our industry panelists. You can do so, and I encourage you to upvote some of these existing questions if you think they're important to you, so we can answer them. So the way we're going to do this is that they're going to have a few minutes to share some ideas and present us and tell us who they are, and then we will go into these questions. So I encourage you to participate in that way, and also we will have the microphone open if you have any questions. So with us we have Pablo Castro with roots from Argentina, and we have Ricardo Villalobos with roots from Mexico. So the biggest questions that we're going to have is, who is more important, Hugo Sanchez or Maradona? It's not there? Okay, never mind. It should be there. It's of course Hugo Sanchez. I'm just kidding. I'm also Mexican. Also a reminder, out there we have booths for our sponsors. So if you want to connect with them and see what opportunities they have for all the Latinos, please do so. So I'm going to say a little bit about Pablo Castro first. He's the Director of Engineering and Applied AI Group at Microsoft, and he's part of the Cloud and AI division at Microsoft. So if you ever work with Azure, chances are you have used some of what he did. And if you also used SQL Server, chances are he wrote some of that code for that. Also, we have Ricardo, and he is a veteran in the software industry, and now after 25 years of more experience with companies worldwide involving supply chain, management, manufacturing, media, gaming, education, telecommunications, you name it. Now he's also serving, helping companies, startups to build or to be more successful by using the cloud infrastructures. So please join me in welcoming Pablo and Ricardo.
All right, thanks.
And we have, if you, or whoever's gonna talk, you can stand and then do the.
Sounds good. Should we go through a few slides first, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna switch there.
All right, get rid of this. Good morning. We have a few slides. We wanted to go first to tell you a little bit about the things we do on the kind of cloud platform on the Azure side of Microsoft. Maybe that'll also get you thinking about some other questions that you might be curious about. And also we want to put some of these areas we're working on and it's kind of in your minds to hear feedback or reactions and whatnot. So we'll take just a few minutes on this, and then we're looking forward to switching to questions. So let's skip one more. So one of the things that is interesting for us to watch from the Microsoft side is how much of AI is being applied to real-world problems. And we've been working on this for a while as an overall company, well outside of also our teams. And what we see is real scenarios where we're making progress, and there are all these customers that are actually navigating through the challenges and landing and working solutions on these. And we see this across a whole spectrum of customers and industries. I had kind of a few examples here, but overall, what we see is, at first it was, well, I need to work on some AI thing because I hear it's the thing to do. And now it's more of, well, here are real problems. Not all of them are solvable perfectly with AI, but some are, and we're seeing kind of very real progress. And a lot of this is built kind of on the foundations of Azure. Now, that said, in the end, all of this progress is grounded on research. So this is a space where that's why we like to be here. We'd like to be connected with the research community, because a lot of these things that are happening in the industry now are all rooted on the work that academia has done through the years. At Microsoft, we have a long history of research. We have a part of Microsoft called Microsoft Research. And many of the breakthroughs that we've seen in the industry come from our efforts on the research side that then we're able to transport back into products and into the industry. Some of these spaces move so fast that like, the moment you put them on the slide, they're already old because somebody else already bid that. Many of these spaces where we've had breakthroughs, we started on research, we did a lot of years of work there, and then we were able to transport this to the industry. Things like, now they are, I guess, quote unquote old, but things like ResNet and things like that, they had to start somewhere that where you couldn't say, no, like I want to start in the industry. You have to start with kind of core research first, explore the space, find what are the solution spaces that are practical, and then move that into the industry. So a few things that we also do that helps us kind of battle test some of these technologies is we have a research area, but also we have, Microsoft is a big commercial software company, which means we have a way to test these for real at ridiculous scale problems. Like, sometimes we sit down with the folks from Office or from the folks from Windows or the Azure teams, and the volume of the things they have to tackle is just crazy. So that is, sometimes it's a little scary, but it's a very powerful for us opportunity to go put all this work in practice and test it out. A few examples that are interesting, of course, Bing, search engines are basically like powered by AI from the bottom up. Office has made a huge amount of progress on things that where you don't talk or see. The word machine learning is nowhere because these are the target audience are consumers of these technologies. But there are things like, you go into PowerPoint today and you at least for me, I'm completely incompetent trying to make anything look good. You go to PowerPoint today and you click make me a good layout, and the thing understands the text and the intent and the patterns, and it has learned how to create good layouts out of all this information. So nobody thinks about this as a machine learning thing when they're consuming it, but under the covers, there are years of work on this. Third example I wanted to give is on Xbox. This is a cool example because we just launched a product to enable third parties to do the same thing, where the problem is typical personalization problem. Like Xbox, in the homepage of Xbox, you have a bunch of tiles, and you want to drive engagement. You want people to see the thing they care about the most and click on that. This is a very dynamic problem. Traditional machine learning approaches where you kind of train offline and then evaluate on the spot don't work because you need too much personalization. So it's different for everybody, and it's too dynamic. Like, this gamer has a thing that happened that day, or there's a piece of news or whatever. So you need things that can kind of navigate what's happening kind of minute to minute. So we used kind of more like a reinforcement learning based approach where we can have kind of an explore exploit approach to kind of train models online, and every few minutes we just drop a new model. These are things that require a level of sophistication that it's not for every company to have. And the challenge for us is, can we make this accessible to a broader set of developers?
Okay, so for this one, and for more context, I want to mention also that we are making sure that when companies decide to use AI, they can use it at different levels. Not everybody's following the same journey. Some of them start at the application level, like Pablo was saying, but some of them want to start from scratch. They want to deploy TensorFlow or some other framework to start creating and running their own models. And we support that. We have the GPU, the CPUs, and actually we have some FPGA chips right now that can support those environments. And then the middle ground is we actually have an environment called Azure Machine Learning, where the models in Python or R can be created without having to worry about the infrastructure behind them. And then at a higher level, we have what we call cognitive services that are basically pre-trained models that any developer can use. And actually, they can customize it with their own data if they decide to. So it's very important that they can, the companies, as they are telling us that they want to try AI, they can enter this journey at any of those different points. It's important to mention that Azure is in 54 different regions. Pablo was showing you the research center, but we actually have data centers with Azure right now in over 54 regions today, 42 operational, 12 to be launched. in the near future. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that whenever we come to conferences, the first reaction is, oh, sure, you're going to ask me to use Windows and your own frameworks and maybe .NET. And even though we keep, obviously, supporting those motions, the reality that in Azure today, over 50% of the workloads are now Linux virtual machines. And we have joined the Linux Foundation. There are a lot of open source going on inside Microsoft with different projects. Pablo can tell you more about it because he has been involved in multiple projects around open source. So just keep that in mind as you come up with different questions and as we are talking about different things around AI and the industry. I'll let you continue, Pablo.
All right, I have a couple more slides and then we'll wrap it up and open for questions. If you go to Azure today and you ask, well, what can I do related to machine learning on Microsoft's cloud platform, there are a million moving parts. So we try to kind of elevate this into what are the tasks that you may be, or the topics you may be interested in working on. We have three main categories. One is, I just want to solve a problem in an application. So I don't want to create a machine learning model necessarily. I just want a solution that maybe it happens to be powered by some machine learning thing. And then we have knowledge mining scenarios as a kind of downstream task, and machine learning for cases where you just want to, as Ricardo was saying, you want to do create your own models from scratch. So this is a very fancy slide that our marketing team put together. The interesting thing about cognitive services is, it turns out that this is not always true, but there is a set of problems that generalize well enough that we can create solutions that allows you to add some of these capabilities into applications without having to go deep into a machine learning model yourself. And sometimes it's because some of our audience are developers, but they're not machine learning experts, so we want to enable them. Sometimes maybe you're an expert in machine learning, but you don't want to take a detour on some random thing that you happen to need, but it's not your core task at hand. And it turns out that there is a lot of progress happening right now that enables us to do this better and better. Like, just to pick on one example, we do this across all the senses. We do like vision, speech, language. But to give you one example that is moving fast these days is in the language space, there are certain tasks that we can do, generalized, like for example, sentiment analysis or named entity recognition. But the last year or two, since things like Elmo and BERT came up and GPT-2, what we see is like a lot more effective models that enable us to do transfer learning on NLP type problems, which means we can do all the work up front on our side and then ask very little of the user of the model in terms of data and training and whatnot, and then still get a pretty good model on the outside of that. And because the tasks themselves are so up-leveled, we can do this under the covers without having to turn how the users consume these. So once you have a foundation like that kind of understand things, you can build downstream tasks. One of them that we see a lot of customers using because they face this problem very often is called knowledge mining. Imagine you have a large corpus of content, a mix of pictures and text and whatnot, and you want to really understand it. So a combination of optical character recognition, image, scene description, text, named entity recognitions, and document classification allows us to kind of take all the bits and pieces that matter out of the content and build knowledge graphs that then you can ask, you can represent as a formal knowledge representation that allows you to then ask proper questions kind of on top of it. And then finally, there are many cases where we try to do these up-level things, and whenever we can, we help by saying there's cognitive services that will solve whatever problem you're trying to solve. But there are many cases where you're like, look, I need you out of the way. I know what model I need to build, or I know what task I have at hand. All I need is all the tools and the platform to get it done. And this is where Azure Machine Learning plays a role, where we try to give you all the tools without telling you how to do things. So if you already have the expertise in an area, or if you're breaking new ground and there is nothing pre-built, then this is the place to go in order to build something. Now, to wrap it up, Ricardo will talk about industries a little bit, or verticals.
Sure. As you are thinking about questions that we can address, these are the most common scenarios where we're finding AI through machine learning is really finding a way. Financial industry, manufacturing, retail. Obviously, there are more, but this is where you can see all those different, I'm not going to read them out loud, but risk analysis, predictive maintenance, et cetera. We have multiple examples of companies doing this. I can tell you that in many cases, we jump right into the models and how to create the models and how to train the models. And there's a lot of work to be done, as you know, before you get to that stage. So a lot of the effort that we're doing with companies right now is about how to acquire the signals first. And actually, we're working with multiple companies in Israel, for example, that are creating specific sensors to acquire the data first. And that's, I mean, you don't think about that as a data scientist or a mathematician applying that, but it's critical. If you don't have the data, how can you start thinking about models? And the other one is data wrangling. There's so much data that making sure that it's filtered, that it's accurate, that it's in a way that it can be consumed, either in SQL or no SQL way, takes a lot of effort. And we're seeing companies spending just 1, 2, even 3 years in that effort before they can start seeing the fruits of machine learning. So things to keep in mind as you are thinking about your questions, and we're going to be talking about this for the next 40 minutes or so, right?
Yep.
All right, perfect.
First question is about people wanting advice on, you know, there's a lot of papers out there, a lot of research being done, and it's really hard to keep up with all this new stuff. So the question is for early career professionals or early scholars, how do you guys, what advice you can give them, or in your case, how do you keep up with all of this stuff? So let's start there.
Sure, let me take a crack at it. Ricardo may have some comments.
Yes, absolutely.
So I would say, so first, I'd say I have more thoughts on the industry side than the academia side of this. Now, on the industry side, thinking about over the years, folks that I've seen do well, I would put them in two categories. There some of us are better adept, and so you kind of pick a topic and you go deep into that topic, and that becomes your specialty. And I've seen this in multiple domains, from query optimization to, say, computer vision or NLP. Others choose to kind of go for breadth, and it's not about taking something very deep, but being able to cover a lot of surface area and connect a lot of dots. I think in either case, it's just too easy to get distracted by the volume of publications and kind of general research that is going on. And it's sometimes it feels like some people seem to keep up with everything. I don't think that's the case. It's just that we sit on this conference and we hear everybody, so it feels like everybody knows everything. But I think in practice, each speaker knows their thing really well. So I think it's unpractical to try and keep up with everything, and I think it's distracting. I think if you are an adept kind of person, then dig into one place and focus on the problem and solution space for that, and don't get distracted by the technology. Focus on the outcomes. I think at least for industry, this is the key forcing function. It's like we are trying to address needs of customers. So drive for outcomes rather than drive for particular technology is important. Also, sometimes these technologies just disappear or evolve in interesting ways. So if you're too committed to something, then things kind of change. If you're going for breadth, then connecting the dots is an important thing. And it's, again, knowing what's going on and develop an ability to connect is a lot more important than knowing every detail of every paper out there.
Yeah, just to reinforce that a little bit, when we work with partners, when I say partners, I mean software developers, startups, data scientists, actually we're working with one specific person that comes to mind around the healthcare space. And he personally created a model to start filtering all the images that are taken via X-rays, and so he had concerns about privacy and different things that you can imagine were important. So when we were talking to him, he mentioned my biggest problem is actually finding a real-world scenario for this, or someone willing to take it and apply it. And that's what we are doing at Microsoft, is building or trying to be that bridge between the different industries, the different companies around the world, and these big ideas either born in the academia or in the startup space. Just to reinforce what Pablo was saying is, as you are thinking where to find information, make sure that you pick not only the the area of research or technology, but the vertical that you believe could be interesting to your research or to your development, either manufacturing, and inside manufacturing you have discrete manufacturing, non-discrete manufacturing, or it could be healthcare, or it could be financial services. But when you find the real world use cases, then it's going to be much easier to find the models, the algorithms that really apply to the problems that these companies are facing. And it's a very different approach from what we're really exposed when we are in research institutions, because it's very easy to get busy just thinking about the big mathematical problem, which is great, but then we need to connect that and correlate that to the real world problems out there. And I will say that there's plenty of sources of information, as you know. The biggest issue is not getting information, it's how to properly filter it. And that's going to help you as you choose different industries or areas to make sure that you start filtering yourself the abundance of data and information.
One more thought that comes to mind is, like, I was thinking when we hire new professionals, like what do we look for? Knowing everything that's going on is not what we look for, because also it's unfair and it's not practical. Things I look for when we're looking for new members of the team are things like, on the topics that you worked, did you go deep on the thing you cared about? And were you able to, can you show a track record where there was a problem, maybe you didn't know about this problem, but there was this problem and you went deep and you cracked it and you understood it, and then you pulled back out, and then there was this other problem and you went deep and you pulled back out. In practice, I don't even care if the problem you were an expert on is the same I'm working on today. What I care about is that you're interested and curious and you want to learn. And I think those are attributes that, especially early career, are a lot more valuable than knowing every paper.
Yeah, we call that on-demand learning. Yeah. As you need it, and obviously being a good team player, that's a big one too. Yeah. Yes.
So, yeah. You're gonna have to pass me this because I forgot this, or recording this, so I had to speak into a microphone. And the next question is really about the same thing that you just mentioned. There's an anonymous question posted that is asking, what do you look for in people that you hire, specifically in the Latinos? Do you look, or what does the industry look into Latinos for? What is it? Is it our accent or something? I'm just kidding. But what is it that it's appealing? And also the same question says, do you have any advice for people who are in academia, possibly students, and the path that they have to follow to get to industry and perhaps get one cool job like yours eventually?
I can take a stab at that while Pablo is thinking about how to complement my answer. So as I already mentioned, obviously, the on-demand learning is very important. It's because we're constantly adapting and adjusting, and the use cases change. So we have to make sure that we can learn on demand. That's the concept. And actually, you can find that there are many books around it, and there are many ways to adapt and adjust to the on-demand learning. The second one is being a good. I already mentioned this, but being a good team player, being able to collaborate with others is critical. And now more than ever at Microsoft, making sure that you're pulling others with you and that you are at the same time leveraging the work of others as you are creating new, whatever it is, software, research, relationships, that you are building everybody together. That's a big change since I joined the company, and I've been with the company almost 10 years. The other one that we look for, and Pablo alluded to this, is passion. And passion is impossible to hide. When you are interviewing, when you are talking to people, you can tell that they are really interested or they want to make a change with what they know. And we definitely take that into consideration. So those three things in my mind is on-demand learning, the team player, and the passion that comes with the conversations. Just to wrap it up, I will say that as Latinos and as minorities in this country, we recognize that we have a headwind. Either we like it or not, there's a headwind. And what I love about Microsoft is that it's very well recognized. And actually, there are ways to get trained on different areas that we can work personally and as a team to start working with that headwind instead of ignoring it, and make sure that there are opportunities for us to grow internally. So it's not only about increasing our technical skills, our business skills, but also how can you be more influential? How can you better create an internal and external network of contacts? All of those things are important to Microsoft, and actually there are many things, many sessions and training that is offered around those three pillars.
Cool. That's a great answer. I don't have a lot to add. So two quick points I'd like to make. One is, one of the parts of the question was, how do you land a job in one of these places? This is a good time. You're in the right industry at the right time. So just connect with someone or show up. Like, there is a lot of demand in all of these big companies. Like, it would be nice if you start with Microsoft, but if you look at the state of the industry right now, the demand for data scientists is very high. And I think it starts with showing up. With the state of the market right now, you'll be in the right place right now. It's a good start. You asked, like, what are the challenges or special things about Latinos? I don't know. So one thing that I've seen sometimes, especially for folks that didn't study in the U.S. or don't live in the U.S., is you're joking about accents, but I think sometimes it's a thing. As someone, so when I came here, I'm old, I guess, so I came here many years ago, I came here to do the interviews and all that, and the moment I was sitting in an interview, I realized that I actually didn't speak English as well as I thought. It was quite a moment where, like, how am I going to do this? And it turns out that in this industry, people are very used to accents, and the difference in accents, in backgrounds, in ways of thinking about things, in even the way we approach descriptions, more or less intensity, more details, or more top-down. That, like, my takeaway from that is, like, it was the case then, and much more now. There is a lot of awareness about the power of diversity, and diversity of backgrounds is one of those. And so people will understand just about everything. So any self-awareness that comes from that, I think, is not necessary.
Yeah, just real quick, 1 minute. Something came to mind. When I met Pablo, he probably doesn't remember, but it was at a conference like 12 years ago. And I approached him, and I said, "Are you from Argentina?" And he was like, "How did you know?" I was speaking English. And say, "We cannot hide our accent. There's no way, even in a different language." So I would say be proud of your accent, but sometimes we confuse the accent with clarity of communication. It's very different. And I think that we need to better structure our ideas. We need to better structure our message. And it starts in our first language, to be completely honest. So sometimes we believe that is the accent, but it's not. It's the clarity of communication, and you can work on that. So don't worry about the accent, worry about the clarity of communication, which is very different.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I agree with that. If you feel like that your accent is well, the pronunciation is probably a totally learnable skill. So just keep practicing. You'll get better at it. You can talk to a lot of us, and we'll help. I saw a couple of years ago a paper, a cartoon that says, the headline was, "Ethics in AI?" And then a number of papers in ethics in AI keep growing exponentially, and then there was the same person saying, "Ethics, oh crap." So the question is, do you think we have a problem with ethics in AI or machine learning? I'm going to guess to say probably. And do you think, what are good practices that you do at work or how does this transform the way you work in machine learning or AI, the question of ethics?
Great question. Let me take a first crack at this. The question is, do you think there are ethical problems? Yeah, I think there's significant ethical challenges when it comes to AI. And this is AI or any technology that would disrupt the way people do their jobs or go about everyday lives has attached to it kind of ethical consequences that we need to think about. At Microsoft, we think about this in multiple layers. And so I want to give kind of two examples of this. At the largest scale, one of the things I really like how Microsoft has modeled this is that we've embraced this challenge head on, and we accept that there are many of these problem spaces that AI is tackling that do bring ethical challenges, and we can't tackle them alone. But we can be part of it. So we are at the forefront of it, both in terms of internally in the company, we have a forum, like we have a committee that kind of helps us frame kind of AI ethical principles that we all use across the company. We also engage the government so that there are things that you can't necessarily do from the private sector perspective. You need the whole industry and the government support. And in those, we just embrace that it's a challenge, work with the governments and try to say, these are frames for things that we think are right choices or dangerous choices. And then we take all this, this alone will only be words. So then we have to kind of bring it to action. So some of the examples of things we do is, I was just talking before about Xbox and reinforcement learning to pick kind of how to personalize things. We actually ship this technology to customers as well so that you can personalize their own things. And along with it, the day we shipped it, we also shipped a paper on kind of ethical guidelines for how to use these. Because these things look shiny and look modern until you start using them. And if you don't think about this, you fall into dangerous traps. Like typical example that we give guidance on how to think about is zip codes. Personalizing by zip codes is a great way to discriminate high income versus low income neighborhoods. And it's too easy to forget about that when you're deep into, is this a feature, is not a feature? So we want to create clear frameworks that allows us to say, this is things to think about, things that are, if you're doing one of these, you may need to pause and think for a minute about the consequences, and things that are generally safe or well understood, how to kind of work around these challenges. And by embedding this directly in the documentation that you use, the moment you're calling this thing, we feel that we have a chance to bring this up at the moment where you're making a choice. So as we do this with more and more of our products, we're hoping that kind of to contribute our part to this challenge, which is certainly a challenge for the entire industry.
So absolutely, AI is driven by humans, and models are created by humans, and data, in many cases, is generated by humans. And as humans, we have ethical challenges. So yes, and Microsoft takes this super seriously. And one of our longest standing CVPs inside the company, Brad Anderson, is actually leading the efforts around ethics for AI inside Microsoft. There are 6 pillars. I'm going to keep it short, just so you know. This is very well aligned with our values inside the company. The first one is fairness. We want to make sure that AI models are equal to everybody. The second one is inclusiveness, making sure that it empowers everybody, regardless of age, sex, race, etc. The third one, it has to be reliable, based on accurate data. The more accurate, the better, obviously, the most accurate, and make sure that if you want to use some data, it has to be accurate. The fourth one is transparency. We want to make sure that the models and how they execute and the algorithms can be seen by anybody using them. The fifth one is accountability. This is very important. The model should be accountable for what it does. And we have shut down, as you know, in some cases, models, and especially in bots that we've been testing. And then the last one, as you know, is privacy and security. There are many issues with using data that is not anonymized, that can be correlated. So those are the 6 pillars for how we are addressing ethics in AI inside Microsoft.
There's a question about the issues surrounding all the hype with AI, because it's grown exponentially in the last few years, and we have a lot of attention. And sometimes everything that goes up goes down or stabilizes, like what happened with Bitcoin, right? So it was really, everybody was greedy, and then it just went down. Do you think this will happen with AI? Is it a problem or a risk that eventually we're going to lose interest, and all the jobs or all the students here or everybody who's making an investment in this and investing their time in the careers, are they going to just is it worth it or is not? What are the risks? What are your opinion on that?
Let me take a first crack at this. So first of all, it has been around for a while. The first question is why now? It's so important. And the reality is because of cloud, because you can run the models very easy in multiple regions, data centers with the power that you need, cheap. It's not expensive to run these models anymore. It used to be almost impossible. You need a physical server with multiple CPUs, GPUs. Not the case anymore. The abundance of data is the other one. So AI is being democratized. So it's been relevant and important for many decades now. So that will not change. It's just that it's getting the spotlight today because of those factors that I just mentioned. No, if anything, will become more relevant. And just to give you an example, if we don't address it, we're going to be in big trouble in the global economy. One city, Louisville in Kentucky, they made a study, and 28% of the jobs are at risk because of AI. So Microsoft just opened an AI hub to start training these different groups of people who might lose their job if they are not retrained. And to be honest, I don't think that we are spending enough time, effort, and money addressing this issue, because it will get worse. And this is the next revolution, and it will affect many lives and many jobs if we don't do something about it. So we need to start thinking how we're going to retrain our job force and how we're going to start helping moving them forward from the typical jobs that we see today to the ones that will be replaced by automation or AI.
Yes, to add to that, from the perspective of this audience, I think you're pretty safe. First, yes, there is hype today. I think the hype has to, part of the challenge is there's this crazy expectation that people have. We sit down with customers all the time, and many of our customers have a huge amount of AI expertise, and they want us to help us, but many are trying to kind of break ground in this space, and they have these kind of unrealistic expectations of what the state of the art can and cannot do. So when the expectations are so far ahead of reality, there is a challenge of people kind of growing disappointed. But if you keep things moving, then what the good thing about being so far ahead is that there's a lot of room for improvement. There's a lot of things people expect all of us to do as a mix of kind of academia and industry. These technologies do, after a couple of decades, tend to fade into the background. That doesn't make them more or less compelling. I think what they do is they get established and they get solidified. Given where we are kind of in the overall cycle of maturity of machine learning in general, I think we have a long time before we even talk about that. And even when it becomes to that, like as someone that worked in database systems for many years, yes, maybe it's not the top of the hype curve, but it's a giant business. There's a huge amount of research going into it. There are plenty of new problems. These things don't stop. I think the question maybe is, could it fizzle off and not go fade to the background, but fade altogether? I think you're pretty safe. I can't imagine that happening.
Good. All right, so I'm not switching jobs. Okay.
Don't buy Bitcoin.
No, that's not by Bitcoin. Yeah, you're right. There's an anonymous question. I think someone wants to get you in trouble or something, but that's okay. They're asking, can you tell us, with being in the industry, can you tell us about a case of failure or success, and what happened? So I'm not sure if you're allowed to say this on recording. It's on the record, of course, so be careful with what you say, okay, Microsoft? We don't want you to get fired. So.
Appreciate that. So let me think. A good failure.
So the bot that we launched.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Chatbot?
Yeah, the chatbot.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I did a paper on that.
That's right.
So
no, that was very public. So it was trained to become racist, basically, after one day, I believe, and we had to shut it down. But yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing: what do you consider failure? In that case, to me, was a success because we learned so much from it. Obviously, the perception of AI was affected, sure, but this is how we move forward. Yeah.
What are the lessons learned?
The lessons learned is that we have to be more careful about how we process the data that is being input around those pillars that I mentioned. The accuracy of the data and how it's being gathered and then moving to the model for retraining has to be filtered and it has to be processed, pre-processed. So that was the learning in that case. And obviously you have to iterate through the model and the process. But the retraining, that's the important part. That's where we learn a lot, on the retraining portion. So, but again, I think that it's very important to understand what failure means, and I think that this is very important for you as well, because you're gonna fail, especially in this. If you consider fail that, you're gonna fail many times. And one of the principles that we have inside Microsoft today is, if you're gonna fail, fail fast. Just fail fast, move on. Fail fast, move on. Root cause analysis, great, move on. We cannot just spend time thinking about those scenarios and just learn from them and keep moving on. So that's why it's difficult. It was not a successful story because we were expecting a different outcome from that point of view, but we learned a lot from it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best example, and it's kind of a very visible one. Mention a smaller example, but in terms of visibility, but equally important in terms of sensitivity, is so we have kind of image classification technology, and there was this question of, well, what were the lessons learned? So image classification can be used for face detection and classification. And one of the things we've seen go wrong with models in multiple parts of the industry, including our own, was depending on the color of your skin, we have different levels of accuracy. And I think then one of the underlying lessons in all of these things is a lot of the data we use was produced and managed by humans, and they carry their biases with them. So this whole area of study about debiasing data and having kind of a formal frame that allows us to understand what biases mean in concrete terms within the data and the models, and how how can we debias the resulting models is it's something that we must account for in the process of making any of these machine learning models that will have an impact on say how we think about people or who gets what. I was talking about zip codes before, just like with faces, there are this effect of, well, do you end up giving insurance premiums to this neighborhood that are cheaper than this other neighborhood? Those things you have to catch early. And we've had our own set of mistakes about that. I think if I have to pick one thing, debiasing is one of these topics that there's a lot more room to go into.
Two very specific examples and lessons, because I think this is important for this audience. The first one is, I'm not going to mention names of companies because then I will get in trouble. So it's an appliance manufacturer, and they were trying to do the following: is you will put a fabric in front of the washing machine, and the machine will set the cycle automatically based on the texture or the fabric that you're trying to wash. It turns out that the cameras that we have today are not accurate enough to detect all the things that are needed to really set the washing cycle, because the combination of colors is very difficult. So it failed. They realized that the sensors that we have today are not enough for that workload. So the lesson is sensors, and I mentioned this already, is creating the right sensors, having the right sensors to acquire the data. I think there's a huge potential for companies to develop these sensors. I think that there will be a big boom in that area as we're seeing it. I'm a cyclist, and we change how we measure our efforts. It used to be the heart rate monitor. Now it's the power effort, and there are new pedals and new cranks and new everything to really measure the power because the metric change or the signal change. So that's one example. It's related to sensors. The second one is to something that Bianca mentioned during the keynote, which is, for some reason, the model is not working or is not at 95% accurate as we need it. It's at 85 or 80%. What's going on? What is the factor that we are not taking into consideration? We were working with this brewing company. They were trying to change the manufacturing plant because they were using different types of bottling process for different drinks, and they have to get an algorithm or model that will tell them when to change it and what was the best time of the day and time of the month and time of the year to switch production. And it was failing. The model was not, after many months of working and trying to capture everything, it was not working. And it turns out that it was one variable, which was the temperature in the room. And because of the oil in the machine will change the consistency and it will affect the production. So they were not taking that into consideration and the model was failing. So those are the two lessons. The sensors are not accurate enough, or we don't have the right ones today, or we are not taking in consideration one of the factors that is affecting the model.
Well, we have to wrap it up, and I was wondering if there is anyone who didn't have a chance to put a question up there who would like to answer it live. I'm going to give a couple of seconds. If not, we're going to go with the next question. So the next question is kind of prophesy. Tell us about the future in your opinion in a minute or less. What do you think are the main challenges to AI in the industry for the next years? What do you see coming? What are challenges or opportunities as well? Prophesy to us. Tell us about the future. What do you think?
Oh, I hate this question. I get it asked very often. I don't have anything brilliant to say, but I will say, because I have a minute or less, I'll make a short-term kind of call for attention. There is no way we have enough data to do a good job in enough domains. I think the category of solutions that involve transfer learning are important in many domains, and they're a lot more developed in some than in others. Like computer vision has done a great job in certain kind of things like classification and object detection. Other domains, not so much, although some is happening in text now with things like transformers and so on. I think overall, if we're going to solve a whole variety of problems, and if we're going to address markets that are from the largest to the smallest, we have to figure out how to do more and more effective transfer learning. And I think that will accelerate the applicability of these models in a much more broader set of problems. I don't think this is a kind of a 10 years prediction. It's more of, I think the next year or two, whoever can crack each one of these problems will get a lot of traction in whatever segment they're cracking it.
Well, I already mentioned this, but I'm going to emphasize it. I don't think that it's on the side of technologies. It's the social impact of AI and the disruption in the job force. I'm really concerned about that. It's the jobs that automation will replace, and the fact that I don't think we're spending enough time and effort retraining the workforce. But I want to be optimistic, and in a world where everybody's connected and we can share the knowledge, should be an easy transition. So I'm going to end up with a note.
The first step to solve the challenges is recognizing them and acknowledge them, and so we can fix them and come up with solutions. Well, on behalf of the Latinos in AI, Latinas, we want to thank you for your time today, and I want to invite anyone who wants to speak with them or to have a chance. You're going to stay for lunch, I hope, maybe? So they're going to be around and hang out. Please come and ask them anything you want. So, and there will be a mentoring session too. Thank you very much. And please help me welcome and thank them again.